Office for National Statistics do is they get a basket of what they call a basket of goods. It's the typical things that a household will spend their money on. So as well as your food shopping and things like that, I'll just pop it down here, it's also your energy bills. Now what we have seen over the last few years is that really rocket. It went up to 5.2% at a peak last year. Since then, things have been falling a bit. We've seen fuel prices start to go down a little bit and energy bills, and also food has come down. But there are worries that the global extreme weather we've had, there have been big droughts in America. Also here, you know, we can't get away from the rain, can we? And that's had an effect on crops as well. Could make a difference to those prices and end up pushing up. Well, with me now is Annette, who is one of the managers here. Good morning to you, Annette. How much have you noticed the prices change?
Recently, we've noticed the price of like dairy products, butter in particular, actually coming down. Meat prices have dropped a little bit as well, and cheese. It's, I'd say 3-4 months.
How much of a difference does it make to your business? Are you constantly having to change the prices?
We do. I mean, we check all our prices every week. As the stock comes in, we check. So any change, it's passed on straight away to the customers or pour down.
So if you've had to put prices up then when things have gone up, has that made much of a difference to people spending?
So in some cases, yes, you know, people have tightened the belts, but other people, they just carried on. And it's a case of they want a nice product and they're happy to pay for it.
And in terms of the future, you've worked here 15 years, haven't you? So you must have seen some big changes. What are you expecting to happen next?
Hopefully onwards and upwards, and, you know, leave the supermarkets behind and we'll carry on holding our own.
OK, well, thank you for your time this morning, Annette. I'll be here throughout the morning. I've got some experts coming in as well to talk to us, just to give us that wider picture about the general cost of living, about the things that have been going up and down. But for now, back to you both.
Steph, thanks very much. We'll see you later.
Time is at 7:21. Olympic athletes are continuing to fly in from around the world today, thousands of them ahead of the Games, but some teams have been training in towns and villages across the UK for weeks.
Yeah, from Serbs in Sheffield to Singaporeans in Surrey, the athletes have been taking time out of their busy schedules to meet local school children, hoping to inspire a new generation of sports stars.
And as John Maguire's been finding out, they've been gaining some very young fans.
It's not every day that the fastest men in the Aberdeen Amateur Athletics Club get to test themselves against an African sprint champion. It's been a busy few weeks for Adam Idrissa and the rest of the Cameroon team. Based in Aberdeen for their pre-Olympics camp, they've been training but also building bridges with local people, making new friends.
And had you even heard of Aberdeen before you came here, really?
No, just 3 months before, during our meetings with the National Olympic Committee of Cameroon, they talked about the negotiation with the town of Aberdeen in Scotland. So that's where we started hearing of Aberdeen. We wanted to know more about Aberdeen. Yeah. And I think it's great. We are very happy.
We are, of course, a long way away from London here in Aberdeen, but the Olympic spirit reaches this far. Children from local schools who've been doing their sports day getting a chance to meet a real live Olympic athlete. So you're pretty excited about the Olympics then, are you?
Yeah.
And tell me why.
Because there's lots of sports that we like. And we just like watching all of it happening and who wins and stuff.
And who do you think you're going to be supporting?
Cameroon and GB. Cameroon.
You'll be supporting Cameroon as well? I think they'll be thrilled to hear that, won't they? They've got a bit of extra support.
Yeah.
Sort of won you over, haven't they? All right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wherever you live in the UK, chances are you've been close to an Olympian. From the Chinese team in Leeds to the Colombians in Newcastle and Gateshead. From the big to the very small. This, the contingent from Malawi, all 8 of them. And they've been hosted by the University of Gloucestershire.
Well, it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to give Gloucestershire, a slice of the Olympic action. So we were delighted because Malawi were very keen that they got out and about in the community whilst they were here, clearly around their training, and we have to be very mindful of what they're actually here to do. But to make sure that young children in primary schools get to see the athletes, community groups get to see the athletes.
For the swimmers, it means the chance to get used to our wonderful weather and an outside pool, the Lido in Cheltenham. They've never used a 50-metre heated pool before.
It's amazing. The water's warm. At home it's really cold, so it's an honour to swim in a warm pool. And of course I enjoy swimming in a 50-metre pool because at home we don't have a 50-metre pool, so it's nice.
For these athletes, the Olympic Games represents the pinnacle of their careers. For some, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And for their hosts, a chance to play their part in London 2012, wherever they live. John Maguire, BBC News, Aberdeen.
That's nice, spreading the support around.
Absolutely. 24 minutes past 7. We're talking about spreading the love around parents and children this morning.
Attachment parenting, where it's a growing idea apparently, come from America,
Where else?
where you keep your child, as a mother, close to you for 3 years. So breastfeeding, carrying in a sling, sleeping in the bed at night.
So Heather says, I have 4 children. I've breastfed, worn them in slings, co-slept and cloth napped them all. It's the most natural way to parent. A baby should be as close as possible to its parent in the early years of its life.
But Louise says she's got a very happy, healthy and confident 6-year-old. Didn't attachment parent, couldn't breastfeed, no way is perfect. You have to go with what works for everybody. After all, a calm and relaxed mum will have a calm baby too.
Sarah, though, says, she's clearly a teacher, I have taught children who've been parented in this way. They are a nightmare.
But Sue says no such thing as too attached. Attachment is the baseline for healthy relationships. Health visitors work hard to support parents to understand attachment.
Louise says, I think it would drive me crazy. I love my kids, but 5 minutes alone always helps.
And this from Martin. Attachment parenting, excellent idea, as long as it's okay to attach the kids to somebody else. Thank you very much indeed for those. We're discussing that in greater detail in the next half hour.
Coming up on Breakfast, you're familiar with the King's speech. What about the Queen's Beach? What was once Queen Victoria's private stretch of coastline is being opened to the public for the first time. We'll bring you a sneak peek. It's on the Isle of Wight.
Yeah, Prince Albert says it's like looking at the Bay of Naples.
Oh, lovely. If only we had the weather of the Bay of Naples at the moment.
Time now to get the news, travel and weather where you are.
See you in a moment.
Hello, good morning. Greater Manchester Police say there are no concerns about security at Olympic venues in the northwest after the force had to step in to secure a hotel in Salford before football teams arrived for the Games. The police are on security at the Marriott in Worsley after the private firm G4S failed to provide enough staff. The chief executive of G4S will be questioned by MPs later, but one man who was trained up by the firm to work on Olympic security told BBC Northwest he's not surprised by what's happened. He's asked to remain anonymous.
Emailed the shifts on the Thursday evening around about 10:30 and I've tried since then and I've still got nowhere and I'm still waiting for a phone call. I've rang them today to find out where they're up to and they said they'll bring me some time today and I've still not heard of them.
Well, you can hear the latest developments on that story on BBC Radio Merseyside this morning at 8:05. The mother of teenager Anthony Walker, who was murdered in a racist attack, is to receive an honorary degree today from the University of Liverpool for her work in trying to promote racial equality. G. Walker set up the Anthony Walker Foundation after her son's death in Huyton 7 years ago. Manchester's Metrolink tram network is 20 years old today. Today's the anniversary of the lines being officially opened. The Queen performed the ceremony for the route between Bury and Altrincham. The tram network now carries 20 million passengers a year, with the most recent extension of the route opening last month between the city centre and Oldham. The American Olympic basketball teams arrive in Manchester today before taking on Team GB at the sport in their first matches. The British team members have been trying to relax before the Games by learning about graffiti art and DJing.
I mean, this is beyond my wildest dreams, to be honest. To be able to play in front of all my friends and family in my hometown against the best team in the world, it's a dream come true.
Travel news in a moment. First, here's Heather.
Good morning. Well, today is going to be cloudy and we are going to see some rain at times. Some of us already seeing that rain. There's some mist around, some fog across the hills, and the rain will increase in intensity as we head through this afternoon. It'll become more widespread, 1 or 2 heavy bursts. So we are looking at a bit of a wet and a cloudy day, but temperatures nevertheless managing to get it to around about 20 Celsius. This evening and tonight, there's a Met Office weather warning in operation for some heavy bursts of rain through this evening and through tonight. Difficult driving conditions, possibly the risk of localised flooding falling onto ground that's already saturated. But temperatures overnight hold up at around 15 or 16 Celsius. Now, tomorrow we're looking at another early warning. This is for some more heavy rain as we head through tomorrow. You'll be able to see the heavy colours, or rather the bright colours, denoting the heavy rain as it comes and goes through tomorrow. So again, difficult driving conditions and the risk of some localised flooding. Temperatures getting to 18 Celsius. The good news is that through the next few days it should gradually become drier. We'll see sunshine and showers for Thursday and Friday, dry by the weekend.
Now, not good this morning. There are delays of up to half an hour on trains through Hazel Grove. That's affecting all services because of a signalling problem. On the roads, delays on Scotland Road in Liverpool because of an accident, and on the Woodhead Pass because of roadworks there. That's it for now. Bye-bye.
Very good morning. Watching Breakfast with Bill Temple and Susanna Reid.
Our main news this morning, the head of the private security firm G4S will face questions today from a committee of MPs over his company's failure to provide enough staff for the Olympic Games.
Nick Buckles will appear before the Home Affairs Select Committee. Yesterday it emerged that police officers from 8 forces have been drafted in to cover for G4S staff who failed to turn up at a number of Olympic venues. I'm going to be speaking to the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, Keith Vaz, after 8 o'clock, and also to the Olympic Security Coordinator, who is Assistant Commissioner Chris Allison.
In other news, the most senior Syrian politician to defect to the opposition has told the BBC the regime there will not hesitate to use chemical weapons. He made his warning as the fighting's moved further into the capital, Damascus. The US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton says President Assad's government will not survive, but Nawaf al-Fawaz, the former ambassador to Iraq, said President Assad would only be ousted by force.
Ministers in the Scottish Government will meet later to discuss plans to allow same-sex marriage. The proposals would see Scotland become the first part of the UK to introduce the policy, but they've provoked strong opposition from some religious groups, with the leader of the Roman Catholic Church in Scotland calling for a referendum on the issue.
A report from the US Senate has accused the British bank HSBC of allowing drug cartels and terrorists to launder money through its US operations. It found that lax controls allowed the activity to go on for 7 years. HSBC officials will appear at a Senate hearing later today and are expected to apologise and make promises to improve their procedures.
New research suggests there's been a big jump in the amount of personal information illegally traded online. The credit checking agency Experian says 12 million items of data were bought and sold by fraudsters in the first 3 months of this year. The average Briton has 26 online accounts, but only 5 different passwords to protect the details.
Tributes have been paid to one of the founding members of the rock group Deep Purple, John Lord, who's died at the age of 71. He'd been receiving treatment for pancreatic cancer. He co-wrote many of the band's most famous songs, including Smoke on the Water. A statement on his website said he had passed from darkness to light.
The United States is suffering its worst drought in more than 50 years. Crops, including corn and soybeans, have been hit by the dry conditions, and several states have seen wildfires. Figures show that there have only been 2 drier occasions in US history, once in the 30s and once in the 1950s.
And this lot should have been on a farm, but they weren't. Here's what they went to. This is Harrogate. Yeah, that's James Lee, laughing as he took the pictures after a herd of cows got out of the field and trampled all over everybody's garden. People slightly upset because there were some rather large hoof prints, but hey, it made a difference to your early morning, didn't it?
Honestly, after the rain we've had, your lawn couldn't get much worse, could it? So a couple of cows just hoofing it over your front garden in the morning. Oh, why not use the grass for something?
Steph's at a delicatessen, looking at the prices of food and fuel and how they've been changing. She'll be talking to us in a few minutes.
And Sally has some donkeys for us this morning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I'm not referring to sports.
No. Watch out for the pets in this next piece. Very cute donkey coming up, Bill. Bradley Wiggins will be enjoying a rest day in the Tour de France today. He's still wearing that yellow jersey after stage 15 of the race. The French crowd were given something to celebrate on the final Monday of this year's Tour. Fans and, well, they brought along family pets too. To watch home favourite Pierrick Fedrigo outsprint Christian van der Velde at the finish. Wiggins and the peloton were almost 12 minutes behind, but despite that, the Briton kept his overall lead over teammate Chris Froome. The 32-year-old is aiming to become the first British winner of the Tour in its 109-year history.
Mentally for the boys, they've had a tough couple of weeks now, and the whole race is tied, so I think everyone's just looking forward to having a bit of downtime tomorrow before we get the last couple of days underway.
Defending Open champion Darren Clarke has added his thoughts on the conditions he'll face at Royal Lytham. He says the course will rightly prove a tough test for the world's best golfers. Clarke will partner Ernie Els and Zach Johnson for his opening rounds. Tiger Woods, who'll play with Justin Rose, branded some areas of the course unplayable after a practice round at the weekend. Clarke agreed that the rough will be difficult to avoid, but the Northern Irishman praised the greenkeepers for preparing a championship course in spite of the terrible weather on the northwest coast.
The course is tough, very tough. It's very narrow. The rough is very, very penal either side of the fairway. It's very, very deep. There's a huge premium on getting the ball in the fairways this week and staying out of the fairway bunkers. They've all been redone. There's some new tees out there. The course is playing longer than it was the last time it was here, but it's in fantastic condition.
Newcastle are still keen to lure Andy Carroll back to Tyneside. They're planning a fresh loan offer for the Liverpool striker after their first bid was rejected. Newcastle initially only offered to pay part of Carroll's £80,000 a week wages. They also wanted to pay £13 million if he then signed a permanent deal. Liverpool want it to be more like £20 million, and that's likely to be the sticking point between the two clubs, reaching a deal for the England international. Dundee will be the club that replaces Rangers in the Scottish Premier League next season. Dundee finished second in the Scottish First Division last season. They were preferred to the relegated Dunfermline, who've been denied a reprieve. And Dundee's chief executive, Scott Gardner, says they will accept the invitation to play in the SPL.
Once the Rangers situation unravelled as it did, then obviously we wanted to look at the situation and see if it was due to be us, and we felt it was. Well, not wishing any ill will on Rangers, once it had been decided, then I felt we had a duty for our club to make sure that a strong case was put and that Dundee Football Club were going to the SPL.
The Chelsea striker Daniel Sturridge has joined up with Team GB as he tries to recover from viral meningitis in time for the Olympics. Stuart Pearce's side face Brazil in a friendly this Friday ahead of their opening game against Senegal. And Pearce says he'll know in the coming few days if Sturridge will be fit enough to play at the Games.
The trouble with this illness is sometimes you can look and feel fine, and then when you do physical exercise it bottoms you out absolutely totally. So that is a real worry for us. We've got our fingers crossed. The boy himself is absolutely desperate to be here and be part of this, you know.
The banter with the lads, the training, the whole setup. I'm really enjoying it. It's different obviously with the Olympic experience, but one that I'm definitely looking forward to and can't wait for it to start.
Is it realistic to think that you guys can win?
Well, that's what we're here for. We're here to win.
Well, Team GB's footballers, along with our swimmers, are waking up in the Olympic Park's Athletes Village for the first time this morning. They're joined by hundreds of athletes who arrived in London yesterday. Team members from all over the world landed ready for the Games. Around 335 competitors touched down from more than 50 countries. It was the busiest day the airport has experienced, but Heathrow operator BAA expects it to be busier still for arriving athletes this time next week. And one programme I want you all to look out for tonight, one man we're all going to be watching, Usain Bolt. Brilliant programme tonight on BBC Three. Can anyone beat Bolt?
Right. Well, someone has recently.
Absolutely, yeah. It's really interesting. Men with a plan to beat him. Do you know where Usain Bolt is right now?
No.
Birmingham University.
I was going to say stuck on the M4.
Quick question about Andy Carroll, because I'm fascinated by this. OK, Newcastle sold him to Liverpool for £35 million. And they want to buy him back for 13.
£13 million. Interesting piece of business, that.
That's amazing.
Liverpool have said no.
Yeah, £22 million lost in, mate.
Astonishing.
He's a good player.
Yeah, he's a great player. And as far as I know, the loan deal wouldn't have even meant that Newcastle paid all of his weekly wages.
Right.
£80,000 a week.
The crazy world of football, Sunny.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
How about the crazy world of weather? Here's Carol. Is that jet stream back on course now?
Well, it's moving north, Billy, as we speak. So that means that the weather will improve for us. Saturday's not looking a bad day, but it's from Tuesday. It's looking like we'll see something closer to what we'd expect at this time of the year. But we've got to get through today first. And today, for many of us, it is going to be dry. There's a fair bit of cloud around. We'll see some sunshine, but equally there's some rain, courtesy of this set of weather fronts. Now, currently, they're bringing some rain in across Northern Ireland. Overnight, for most of us, it's been dry. It's fairly mild as well. It's mild at the moment, and we've had one or two showers. But here's the weather front introducing that rain to Northern Ireland, so it's a wet start here, and it'll be wet for the next few hours. For Scotland this morning, well, it's mostly dry at this stage. quite a lot of cloud around, some brighter breaks, again some sunshine coming through. Once again a dry day in the northwest of Scotland, where it has been dry for quite a long time now. And then as we come south into the northwest of England, the Midlands, we're back under this veil of cloud, but you can see where it is breaking up and where the sunshine's coming through. And it's not as windy today as it was yesterday, but even at 9 o'clock temperatures resting at 16 or 17 degrees. Into the southwest, not nearly as windy in the southwest as it was this time yesterday, but still fairly cloudy, and fairly cloudy too across Wales, with just the odd shower here and there. Now through the day what you'll find is that there will be some sunny breaks and it will feel pleasantly warm in them. In fact, it will feel humid in the southeast. But the rain's going to move into the north of England, possibly into southern Scotland as well. And it could be heavy anywhere from Cheshire to Yorkshire. Equally, there'll be some showers developing from Wales over in the direction of East Anglia, but we won't all catch one. Now through the evening and overnight there still will be some of those showers, but look at this rain coming in across Northern Ireland, Northern England and also Scotland. Now there's still a bit of uncertainty as to its northern extent, and there'll be some rain or drizzle affecting western areas as well, but generally for the rest of us it's looking dry. Now tomorrow we still will have all this rain. Again, some of it will be heavy. There'll be some showers around which could be heavy with some hail and thunder as well. But as you come south, looking at drier conditions, again with a wee bit of sunshine around and temperatures up to a maximum of 21 degrees, which is 70 Fahrenheit. Billy and Susanna.
All right, we'll buy that. Thanks very much, Carol.
7:40. It's being reported that dozens of support groups for mums and dads have been set up around the UK to promote a controversial way of bringing up children.
It's called attachment parenting, and it calls for children to be kept physically close to their mother at all times.
So the theory is based on 3 Bs: breastfeeding, bed sharing and baby carrying in slings, and all of these should be done until the child is 3 years old. Some critics, though, concerned that youngsters can become too attached.
Well, in a moment we'll be joined by Della Hyde and her son Will, who's 2 years old, nearly 3, and psychologist David Holmes. First, though, we've been asking, how practical is it really?
I can understand, certainly in the first year of the baby's life, they're wanting the skin contact and building the bond in that way with the baby. But 3 years is excessive to me, to put it simply.
Because I hold him close to me all the time like this, it's making him a bit mad. It's like if I don't hold him, he cries. But I've got to go back to work in March. And, do you know what I mean? It's hard.
Why? No, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's bad enough anyway, isn't it? You know what I mean? You can't do anything anyway, doing normal day-to-day things, but to have them in a sling, then in bed with you, no, I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
I think maybe not necessarily having them actually with you physically all the time, but definitely spending more time with the children does benefit them later on in life, definitely.
3 years? Ow! When they get teeth, I think it's time to stop breastfeeding, to be honest with you. Well, for me, I did it for as long as I could, but it was for about 2-3 months for each of them, and I think that was enough.
Well, with us now is Della Hyde and Will, as we mentioned, and psychologist David Holmes. So, good morning to you all. So, Della, explain, you have Will here who's getting on for 3.
Yeah.
You have another son who's 20 months
Yeah.
old and another child on the way.
Yeah.
So all of them, and one of them particularly,
Yeah.
attached.
Yeah.
That's a lot of motherhood going on there, isn't it?
Well, that's what being a mum is.
How long did you breastfeed Will for?
I breastfed Will for I think it was about 5 or 6 months.
Okay.
And his brother until he was about 18 months, but he self-weaned because I'm pregnant and he's had kind of like a bit of a funny change.
Okay, so 1.5 years is quite a long time to breastfeed a child, and you say self-weaned, so you would have carried on.
Yeah, but the World Health Organisation and
He's very excited because he can see himself on the telly.
And the World Health Organisation and the NHS recommend breastfeeding up to 2 years and beyond.
Right.
So, 18, 19 months is
And
not really anything.
are both boys in bed with you at night?
Not anymore because of bump, but a lot of people who do practice attachment parenting do still bed share until 3 and 4.
Yeah. So, okay, David, Will seems a very happy, contented little chap.
Yep. Noisy, but.
What are they? Seen himself on television, likes well, at least he's enjoying the experience. What are the problems with attachment
You're
parenting?
going to ask me for the downside. Well,
only in the interest of balance, of course.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is no empirical evidence to support this approach.
Okay.
Fair enough, but then again, you know, science doesn't work with everything when it comes to actually parenting, because it's a case of, as Della would say, you know, a bit of variety, and it's who can benefit and who can't, and to what extent.
Is there any damage done?
It depends. I mean, some people's approach to it, people don't interpret it absolutely the same, and you're allowed not to. And some people will take a fairly hard-line view on this, and they can be extreme, because you can make the child over-dependent.
Okay, so this
by stepping in too much, which is actually against the initial SEER's recommendations. It damages your other relationships, because needless to say, it's going to push them out the way, because you're focusing on the child. And certainly there are studies that say that there's a lot less sex life, a lot less you know, socialising, etc., if you adopt this technique, particularly if you've got more than one child.
Okay. Well, Della, what occurs to me is, how do you unattach yourself from an attached child? If you have, you'll have 3 young ones. Will be making his own way into the world, to put it sort of kindly.
Well, it's not about keeping them physically close all the time. It's about creating emotional bonds and responding to them sympathetically and empathetically. So just in response to saying about pushing out other relationships, well, I've got another baby on the way, so it kind of shows.
That implies a couple of minutes, yes.
And we do. He does have very strong relationships with family as well, and with very good close friends as well. He's got a great circle of friends.
What about this? One of the things that those in favour of attachment parenting say is that actually it encourages your child to be independent. But lots of people would say, how can a dependent child be independent?
By the fact that he's always assured, by parenting in a way that you feel sympathetic to their needs, he will always know that you will always be kind, and you will always be there as well.
Okay.
So he's the child that when we get out of the car at Dunamasi, will go, there's some deer over there. Look at mum and dad. Yeah, they're there. And go.
So it promotes, David, confidence and strength of character, because you have this strong foundation where you're very sure of your parenting.
This is when it goes absolutely correct.
Okay.
As in this case. Where it goes wrong is, needless to say, the child becomes fearful of boundaries, because they don't have boundaries set. A lot of anxiety in children is caused by the fact you've not got boundaries and you've not got predictability. They do like routine to some degree, and also they like to know where their limits are.
How do you, if a lot of parents will be watching saying, I'm not sure, is this for me? Should I be going down this route or not? How do you decide if it's the right thing for you?
It's very difficult. Have a look at the kind of recommendations, and particularly recommendation 8, I think, of the original thing, which says you should balance your social and personal relationships with your child parenting as well. If you
like your sleep and you don't like being kicked in the night, then
and you know, that's probably not. But I mean, needless to say, if you rigidly try and, you know, adhere to it when it's beyond your needs, then you're going to have problems, because you can end up with a situation where the child's being used by the parent. Literally, it's kind of an abuse, if you like, because they're using that child as a friend, particularly later in life. It's the wrong kind of bonding. Whereas here, where the mother is just used as a platform to launch them confidently into the world, it works well.
I love it. Will, where are you off to?
Will, hello, Will. Just come back here a second, if you would.
Come and say hello.
I love
there
it.
you go, that's it. Good lad. No, sir, right. Don't worry, you haven't done anything wrong. You wanted to see himself on the telly. Good.
Attachment parenting is about flexibility. If there are certain things that don't fit with you in your life, you don't have to do them. And your child and your family. You know, my husband does attachment parenting also. It's not just me. So, I mean, the great resources like Attachment Parenting UK, for all that information, for all those support when you've sat and the baby's crying, you don't know what to do, and you think, well, should I really leave them to cry it out? There's information there for you. Like, there's great support forums as well, like Natural Mamas Forum.
It'd be horrifically problematic if your husband didn't.
If you were divided over
and you
it,
were, yes, and you've got conflict and the child's in the middle.
That's with any parenting style, isn't it? That you would have to compromise for what's best for your family.
Well, I'm afraid we have to leave it there.
Yeah.
But thank you both, and Will, thank you very much indeed for staying with us throughout the interview. Oh, and to Buzz Lightyear as well, who's making his own contribution. Thank you both.
Well, rather stole the show there.
He did.
7:48, you're watching Breakfast from BBC News. Let's update you on our main news this morning. The chief executive of the security firm G4S will face tough questions from MPs today about why his company failed to provide the staff it promised for the Olympic Games.
And ministers in the Scottish Government will be discussing plans today whether they should allow same-sex marriage in Scotland.
Still to come on the programme this morning, how international Olympic athletes from Cameroon to Colombia are putting school children in the UK on the right track.
We sent Steph out to a delicatessen today to get some nice pastries and look at the inflation figures due out later this morning. Hi, Steph.
Hiya, good morning everybody. Yes, we'll find out later how much the cost of living has been going up by. It's measured as inflation, consumer prices index we call it, and basically it gives us a sense of how much things have been going up by. Now, one of the big things has been food. That's been falling over recent years, but now there are concerns that the weather, the awful weather we've seen here, but also droughts in America and other problems across the world could push prices up. And I've got two experts here with me this morning. Good morning. We've got Simon Bauer first of all. Simon, you're a coffee trader. You import coffee and you also sell it here. What's business like for you at the moment?
Well, business is very brisk. Actually, coffee does very well in times of recession. But the world prices in coffee are all over the place. They're 1 minute they're up, 1 minute they're down. They hit a 15-month low just last week, and now they're bouncing back again. And there's all sorts of reasons for that. Some of them fundamental and some of them just speculation.
What difference does it make to your business then when you see these big changes? Because it's not just the raw product itself, it's also the other costs associated.
Yeah, the raw product might account for maybe 5% of the total cost, because you've got to transport it from these tropical countries where it grows. You've got to pay for your fuel and your transport and your staff wages. So it does have an effect on the overall pricing. More than that, it has an effect on the supply and demand, because farmers won't sell it if it goes too low. But, you know, even if coffee prices were to double tomorrow, as far as the consumer's concerned, it would probably only put 3 or 4 pence on a cup of coffee.
And there's exchange rates to think about as well when you're bringing in products from another country.
That's been the problem, because as the coffee prices dropped, then the exchange rates have dropped, and as it's increased, the exchange rates have increased. So we've seen a bit of a buffering towards those. Coffee's traded in dollars, the dollar's all over the place. But actually, one of the biggest effects has been the movement of banks and investment houses out of their traditional investments of stocks and shares and into soft commodities like coffee, like wheat and like cereals.
So lots of things that affect the
All
prices. And also with us we've got Glyn Jones. Good morning to you, Glyn, a market expert on things like this. Give us the wider context of inflation, because it's not just about food and coffee.
No, I mean, food is only makes up about 12% of the inflation indices we see. Now, we're very much expecting broadly what we saw last month with inflation just under 3%. Now, while food is starting to rise again, we've still got a slowing global economy, so industrial metals, energy is coming down, so you may spend some more money on your food, but it's cheaper to fill up your car, so overall your inflation is not too bad.
So it feels like it's still easing?
It still feels like it's easing. I mean, you have to remember some very sharp price increases about a year ago are dropping out of the calculations now, so prices are still going up, but not as much as they were last year.
And for people sitting at home watching this, they might feel that their personal inflation is very different to that, because we're talking about an average that's taken when we're calculating this figure.
Yes, I mean, it's an average basket of goods that's meant to represent the average person, but it depends what you spend your money on. So if you spend a lot of money on transport, on filling up your car, then actually your personal inflation is probably quite low at the moment. Petrol's coming down. Stamps, on the other hand, we've seen Royal Mail put up, that was the highest item last month. If you send a lot of letters, your personal inflation is going to be very high.
OK, well, thank you for your time this morning. And I have to say to Glyn's girlfriend, don't worry, he's still on the diet. He is not going to eat that pasty. Are you? Oh, Glyn! Within 30 seconds, you cropped it. Okay. He's been panicking all morning, seriously, about his girlfriend.
All right, Steph.
Be tempted.
Back to you, brother.
Yeah. She could have helped him. Queen Victoria's private beach on the Isle of Wight is to be open to the public for the first time.
From next week, visitors will see where the Queen's 9 children learn to swim. And as Nick Hyam has been finding out, the main attraction will be the bathing machine used to preserve the Queen's modesty.
February 1901, and Queen Victoria's coffin is escorted through the streets of Cowes on the Isle of Wight, leaving for the last time a place where she'd spent some of the happiest times of her life. For over a week, the Queen had lain in state at Osborne, the house she and her beloved husband Albert had built in the 1840s. before his early death. Osborne may look grand, but it was built for a young, lively and growing family. There's a painting of the couple with 5 of an eventual 9 children above the dining table. On the top floor there's a crowded nursery, almost a baby factory. And half a mile away, through the trees, there's a beach.
Osborne was a private family home. It was a place of escape for the royal family, somewhere where they could lead a degree of normal family life. And I think the beach down here particularly gave the family, and particularly the children, an enormous sense of freedom and enjoyment.
The family sketched. This watercolour is by the Queen herself. They collected seashells and they swam. Prince Albert designed a floating swimming pool moored in the bay. Only this model survives. In it, Victoria's children and her grandchildren could learn to swim in safety.
It's a lovely spot. It's tranquil, it's secluded, and you can see why Albert and Victoria liked it so much. Albert indeed used to say that the views across the Solent towards Portsmouth reminded him of the Bay of Naples in Italy. Though not, it has to be said, on a day like today.
Despite the weather, they're hard at work preparing to open the beach to the public for the first time. And in pride of place, this, Queen Victoria's bathing machine.
It's a changing room on wheels, really, and the Queen would enter the bathing machine from the back with her bathing attendant, change into her bathing costume. Meanwhile, the whole thing would have been winched down into the sea along these stone tracks. Once the bathing machine was in the water, up to the level of the axles, I suspect, the Queen emerged from this front door, down the steps, in her bathing costume, and then starts swimming.
The first time she used it, the first time she swam in the sea, Victoria wrote, "I thought it delightful until I put my head underwater when I thought I should be stifled." It's thought she used the machine, which even had a lavatory plumbed in, until she was in her 60s. Now members of the public will be able to swim from Victoria's private beach, though not using her bathing machine. Nick Hyam, BBC News at Osborne on the Isle of Wight.
And when the weather gets better, which it will, it'll be quite fun.
It'll be lovely. 9 children. I forget that she had 9 children.
Were they all attached?
Well, talking about attached parenting, we have had a tweet.
Yeah.
Is attachment parenting, that means breastfeeding for years and co-sleeping, a good idea? Yes, says Playing Gold Band on Twitter. My 22-year-old daughter is still firmly attached to my wallet and bank account.
Time now to get news, travel and weather where you are.
See you in a moment.
Hello there, good morning. Greater Manchester Police say there are no concerns about security at Olympic venues in the northwest after the force had to step in to secure a hotel in Salford before football teams arrived for the games. The police are on security at the Marriott in Worsley after the private firm G4S failed to provide enough staff. The chief executive of G4S will be questioned later by MPs. But one man who was trained up by the firm to work on Olympic security told BBC Northwest he's not surprised by what's happened. He's asked to remain anonymous.
I got the email of the shifts on the Thursday evening around about 10:30 and I've tried since then and I've still got nowhere and I'm still waiting for a phone call. I've rang them today to find out where they're up to and they said they'll bring me some time today and I've still not heard of them.
You can hear the latest developments on that on BBC Radio Merseyside this morning at 8:05. An investigation is underway after a man's body was found in the water at the Albert Dock in Liverpool this morning. The dead man's believed to have been in his 50s. He was found by a member of the public at around 6 o'clock. The mother of teenager Anthony Walker, who was murdered in a racist attack, is to receive an honorary degree today from the University of Liverpool for her work in trying to promote racial equality. G. Walker set up the Anthony Walker Foundation after her son's death in Huyton 7 years ago. Manchester's Metrolink tram network's 20 years old today, as today's the anniversary of the lines being officially opened. The Queen performed the ceremony for the route between Bury and Altrincham. The tram network now carries 20 million passengers a year, with the most recent extension of the route opening last month between the city centre and Oldham. A painting of the legendary Spanish golfer Seve Ballesteros will be unveiled later at the Royal Lytham and St Anne's Golf Club. The week of the Open, he won 2 Opens himself at the course in 1979 and 88. Now let's get the weather. Here's Heather.
Good morning. Well, today it's going to look pretty cloudy, and it is going to be wet at times. Here in Salford, we got off to a misty and a murky start to the day, and it's likely that you did too. Misty and murky, we'll see some outbreaks of rain as we head through the day, particularly through this afternoon. Top temperatures today, well, it's not cold. They'll get to around about 20 Celsius. Now, this evening and tonight, there's a Met Office weather warning in operation. We are going to get some heavy bursts of rain every now and again, falling onto ground that's already saturated, so there's the risk of some localised flooding and some difficult driving conditions through this evening and through tonight. Again, it's certainly not cold. Temperatures overnight for some of us no lower than 16 Celsius. And then tomorrow, well, another Met Office warning. This is an early warning for some heavy rain possible tomorrow. You'll see where the brighter colours are on the chart. We're going to see some heavy downpours, widespread. So again, the risk of some localised flooding and some difficult driving conditions. Fairly windy as well. Top temperatures 18 Celsius. And then the rest of the week, well, it starts to improve. Sunshine and showers for Thursday and Friday. By the weekend, it's looking a little drier.
It's one piece of good news. There are problems on the trains this morning. Delays of up to half an hour on trains between Manchester and Sheffield through Hazel Grove. On the roads, delays on Scotland Road in Liverpool because of an accident, and also on the Woodhead Pass this morning because of roadworks. I'll be back with more in half an hour. See you then.
Improve hydration with the latest Isotonic Sports Drink Liquid. Up your game with the best flex padded sport foam sports shoe. And push your performance with a pH ready sports supplement solution. Just put it to the test.
Panorama does exactly that. The truth about sports products. Thursday at 8 on BBC One.
Hello, this is Breakfast with Bill Turnbull and Susanna Reid.
The head of G4S faces a grilling from MPs today over his firm's failure to provide enough security staff for the Olympics.
Police from 8 forces are now being drafted in to plug the gaps at a number of the Games venues.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, the 17th of July.
Also ahead this morning, could Scotland become the first part of the UK to allow same-sex marriage? Ministers there meet today to discuss the proposal.
How millions of pieces of personal information stored online have been traded by identity fraudsters.
Good morning. We'll find out later today how much the cost of living has been going up by. One of the worries is that maybe the extreme weather we've seen across the world could affect food prices. I'll have more shortly.
In sport, it's a rest day at the Tour de France with Bradley Wiggins still in yellow. He's becoming a familiar face at the head of the pack. Wiggins leads with 5 stages to go.
We've got 2 of the stars from Coronation Street joining us this morning, talking about the current storyline which tackles the issue of domestic violence against men.
And comedian Sean Hughes telling us about how he's got not 1 but 2 shows at the Edinburgh Festival. Carol has the weather.
Good morning. Today for many of us it's going to be a dry day with some sunny breaks. However, there's also some rain around, moving across Northern Ireland currently. It will spread into Northern England and Southern Scotland. I'll have more details in about 15 minutes.
Carol, thanks very much.
Good morning. First, our main news. The head of the private security firm G4S will face questions today from a committee of MPs over his company's failure to provide enough staff for the Olympic Games.
It's emerged that 8 police forces are having to fill gaps after workers for G4S failed to turn up at some venues.
The questions for G4S and the government just keep coming. First, the military had to find an extra 3,500 troops to plug a gap in rotas because the company couldn't find enough staff. Now police from 8 forces have had to deploy extra officers to do Olympic security work too. Little wonder then that the MPs who will question both G4S's chief executive and the man specifically responsible for their Olympics contract are not just bemused, but angry.
G4S bear the major responsibility, there's no doubt about it. But what was the government doing? Weren't they progress chasing all the time? Weren't they going to meetings and saying, well, is everything on time and the rest of it? The games are soon to begin. So I think really it's a shambles, and it's unfortunate to say the least.
The government says G4S shouldn't be subjected to a witch hunt, but ministers are promising there will be an investigation into all of this after the Games. The Ministry of Defence has also confirmed its officials have held meetings at G4S's headquarters about their work with the company. So the boss of G4S can expect a pretty rough ride when he appears here later on. And the committee putting the questions are saying they'll speak to the Home Secretary too, but not until after the Olympics. Chris Mason, BBC News at Westminster.
And we'll speak to the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, Keith Vaz, and the Olympic Security Coordinator, Assistant Commissioner Chris Allison, in just a few minutes.
Now, the government spending watchdog says the UK Border Agency has cut too many staff too quickly and is now having to hire extra people and increase overtime to meet demands.
The National Audit Office found the organisation continued with the cuts even after it emerged that a new IT system intended to increase efficiency was behind schedule. The government said it had overhauled much of the UK Border Agency's work.
The most senior Syrian politician to defect to the opposition has told the BBC the regime will not hesitate to use chemical weapons. The warning comes as the fighting moves further into the capital, Damascus. The American Secretary of State Hillary Clinton says President Assad's government won't survive, but Nawaf al-Fares, the former ambassador to Iraq, said President Assad would only be ousted by force.
There is some information, unconfirmed information of course, that chemical weapons have been used partially in Homs. However, I have absolute conviction that if the circle of the people of Syria becomes tighter on the regime will not hesitate to use chemical weapons.
Ministers in the Scottish Government will discuss plans today to allow same-sex marriage.
The proposals would see Scotland become the first part of the UK to introduce the policy, but that's provoked strong opposition from some religious groups. The leader of the Roman Catholic Church in Scotland is calling for a referendum on the issue.
Should gay people be allowed to marry in a religious setting? The Scottish Government says it tends towards the view that they should, as long as faith groups are not forced to conduct the ceremonies. A consultation on the issue has received 77,000 responses from individuals and organisations, almost 3 times the number who took part in a similar exercise on Scottish independence. The responses include outrage from Church of Scotland ministers and Catholic priests who say they will not participate. Others, such as Quakers and the Metropolitan Community Church, say they would host same-sex ceremonies. Gay rights campaigners admit there's little legal difference between marriage and civil partnerships, which were introduced to the UK in 2005, but they say the ability to marry in a religious setting is about equality. Britain's most senior Roman Catholic, Cardinal Keith O'Brien, says the plans are madness. He argues that politicians should place their trust in the Scottish people and ask their views on the matter in a referendum. James Cook, BBC News.
A report from the US Senate has accused the British bank HSBC of allowing drug cartels and terrorists to launder money through its US operations. It found that lax controls allowed the activity to go on for 7 years. HSB officials will appear at a Senate hearing later today, and they're expected to apologise and make promises to improve their procedures.
New research suggests there's been a big jump in the amount of personal information being illegally traded online.
The credit checking agency Experian says 12 million items of data were bought and sold by fraudsters in the first 3 months of this year.
Have you got a digital double? And if you did, would you even know? When you sign up to a website, even if you change your password, your details are still there online where they could be stolen. According to new research, 12 million pieces of personal information were traded by fraudsters online in the first 3 months of this year, putting people more at risk of identity fraud.
Many of us generate several online profiles over time and then forget to check them, leaving our identity open to digital doppelgangers.
The research from Experian says that nearly 1 in 5 of us sign up to at least 6 sites a month. And most of us leave our details unattended, as only 20% close down our accounts when we're finished with them. And nearly a quarter let web browsers remember their passwords. The advice is that simply changing your passwords won't work, but there are programs to help keep your identity safe so your details won't turn up somewhere they shouldn't. Katie Rowlett, BBC News.
Tributes have been paid to one of the founding members of the rock group Deep Purple, John Lord, who's died at the age of 71. He'd been receiving treatment for pancreatic cancer. He co-wrote many of the band's most famous songs, including Smoke on the Water.
Well, fellow musicians have been paying tribute to John on Twitter. Singer Bryan Adams said he was an incredible organist and from one of his favourite bands growing up.
And Alice Cooper said he was heartbroken after hearing the news of John Lord's death.
John Lord, who died at the age of 71. Now, the United States is suffering its worst drought in more than 50 years. Crops, including corn and soybeans, have been hit by the dry conditions, and several states have seen wildfires as well. Figures show there have only been 2 drier occasions in American history, once in the 1930s and once in the 50s.
Now, you've heard of fresh milk being delivered to your doorstep, but this is taking things a little bit too far. This is what you'd have seen out of your window in a certain road in Harrogate this week.
And that chuckle is James Lee, who filmed the pictures after the herd of cows managed to get out of their field and trample across his and his neighbours' front lawns. Some people said to be upset because there were 6-inch hoof prints in their garden.
On the other hand, it's something different, isn't it? Eh? Just the stampedes down the lane.
And if that's a cul-de-sac, they'll be coming back in a moment. Those are the main stories this morning, 9 minutes past 8. Carol will bring you a weather forecast in the next 10 minutes.
Now, though, back to our main story. It seems every day for the past week there have been new questions about what's been going wrong for the security firm G4S and its job to provide staff for the Olympics.
Today could finally provide some answers as its boss Nick Buckles goes before the Home Affairs Select Committee. Joining us now from our studio in West London, Keith Vaz, who is chair of that committee of MPs. Very good morning to you, Mr. Vaz.
Good morning, Susanna.
Now, is this a man today you're questioning who is going to keep his job, do you think?
We are there to pose to Nick Buckles and Ian Horseman-Smith, the 2 representatives of G4S, many of the questions that members of Parliament asked rightly last Thursday and yesterday in the House of Commons. I think it's very important that we get a full explanation of precisely what happened over the last few months, weeks, and indeed what happened last Wednesday, when the Home Secretary told the House of Commons she first discovered that there was a shortfall in the number of people that were going to be provided by G4S. So I think what we need to do is to establish the facts. It's a fact-finding mission. This is not the end. It's only the beginning. There are 3 parts to this story: the Home Office, LOCOG and G4S, and this is basically the first instalment. I've written to others involved, and we will have the Home Secretary before the committee in September once the Olympics and the Paralympics have been completed.
Yeah, I suppose that's one of the key problems, isn't it, today, is that as thousands of athletes arrive for the Olympic Games, there is a danger that the person who is in charge of providing the security officers to make them safe is sitting in front of a committee of MPs, that we are in danger of being ever so critical about that operation. He needs to be out there providing leadership, doesn't he? And we don't want to have a big witch hunt at this stage.
The Home Affairs Select Committee can never be accused of conducting a witch hunt. We're there because we live in a parliamentary democracy, Suzanne, and therefore it's important to hear questions and answers. We are only going to have him for a short while. I don't think that Nick Buckles personally is going to be standing outside the Olympic Stadium checking people's handbags. It's quite right that we should hear from him, and that's why I'm glad that he was able to come in. We've not called other people for the very reasons that you have just outlined. We'd rather they got on with the job. But he is the chief executive of this company. I don't think that he is going to, as I say, be personally responsible for the security of all the millions of people who visit the site. And it's right that Parliament and the public should get an explanation. And he has readily agreed to cooperate with the committee. And we will return to this subject later on. Because as you said in your introduction, this moves on every single day. Only yesterday we discovered a lot of the G4S staff did not turn up at a number of venues, and the police had to be called in to take their place. So it is important that we put this matter forward in the way in which we have, and I'm glad that he's coming in.
So the key questions then that you'll be asking him, presumably, I mean, the ones that, you know, the public want answered, where did they think they were going to get these huge numbers of security guards and officers from? Why didn't they manage to recruit the right numbers? When did they know that they weren't going to have the right numbers? And why does it appear that they told the person at the top, the Home Secretary, so late?
Well, that's very helpful. I think you've written the questions for us. I can't give you the answers.
Presumably you've got some other rather more finessed ones as well.
Well, I think we'd start with those. I can't obviously conduct the hearing here on Breakfast TV at the BBC, but thanks very much. I will pass on a transcript of this interview to members of the committee, and I'm sure one or two of them will pick up the questions that you've just put forward.
Well, what else? I mean, what about the fact that if the army has to step in and police officers are now stepping in at the last minute, are you going to be asking G4S if they're footing the bill for that?
Well, there's another question. I think if the longer we go on, the better this becomes and the easier for members of the Home Affairs Select Committee. We've only got to wait about 4 hours. We've got a very intelligent group of MPs who are going to pose all the questions, I'm sure, that you've just mentioned, and possibly even more, because they can think of questions themselves, and they will be able to probe Mr. Buckles and Mr. Horseman-Smith. Let us get to the bottom of this situation. Let us get to the facts. I'm 55 years of age. We've never had the Olympics in London during my lifetime. It's probably going to not happen again in the lifetime of many of the viewers of this programme. This is the greatest show on earth. It's right that we should ask the people who promised to supply the security important questions, and it's right to hear their answers.
And just, we discussed a little earlier the fact that you have the guy in charge of providing the security officers there today, but not the Home Secretary. People will want to have you asking those probing questions of the Home Secretary as well. Why not talk to Theresa May right now?
Well, we've got a good record of probing the Home Secretary in a number of inquiries, for the very reasons that you outlined when you introduced this package, which is that she is extremely busy. I have spoken to her personally about this. We have written her a number of questions in a letter that I sent last week, and she is going to appear before the committee on the 10th of September, which is immediately after the Paralympic Games. I'm also going to call the Chief Inspector of Her Majesty's Inspectorate, because he produced a report, and the head of the Olympic Security Board, Charles Farr. I think the committee wants to hear from everybody so we can provide a definitive report to Parliament.
All right, Keith Vaz, Chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, thanks very much indeed.
Do they ever have a guest interrogator on the committee? Do you think they could get you down there quickly?
Get on a train?
It's just gone 8:15, still to come on the programme this morning.
It does help build the relationships, definitely. It helps nurture them as well.
Talking about attachment parenting, when you keep your child close to you, really close, for up to 3 years. A practice continuing to divide opinion. We're going to ask one attachment mother how easy it is to cut out cots, bottles and buggies.
Can we just cut out the rain? Just for a day, Carol, please?
Well, for many today, Susanna, wait till you see my headline. It is dry for many. However, having said that, we can't completely rule out the rain. We've got an array of weather fronts coming in from the Atlantic, and they're currently producing some rain across Northern Ireland. And what's going to happen is they're going to drift further eastward through the course of the day. So Northern England will also see some rain for a time. Now, through the course of this morning, we'll continue with the rain in Northern Ireland, but for most of the land, it's dry. In fact, fairly bright as well. We'll see some decent sunny spells through the course of the day. But here's the rain crossing into Northern England and anywhere from Cheshire to Yorkshire through the afternoon. Now, through the evening and overnight, the rain again comes through Northern Ireland, advances through the north of England and into Scotland, and there's a wee bit of uncertainty about its northern extent. In western areas, we're looking at some rain or indeed some drizzle. As we go into tomorrow, you'll notice the wind, it will become more of a feature at times. Our rain band pushes steadily northwards and we have a packet of showers coming in behind. Some of them could be heavy and also have some thunder and some hail mixed in, but in any sunshine, temperatures up to between about 18 and 21 degrees. Then for Thursday, it's going to be quite a showery day. And once again, some of those showers could be heavy with hail and also some thunder. But the further north that you are, the drier it is likely to be. And on Thursday, we're looking at highs of round about 19 degrees. And to leave you on a bright note, well, Saturday's looking not too bad for many of us. And from Tuesday, well, we might see something more reminiscent of what we'd expect at this time of the year, Billy and Susanna.
Well, that's good. Carol, thanks very much indeed.
So just 10 days to go until the opening ceremony, and we've just been talking to Keith Vaz, of course, about the grilling of G4S later on today. So should we be concerned about security arrangements?
Well, let's talk to Assistant Commissioner from the Met Police, Chris Allison, who's responsible for coordinating Olympic security, and he joins us now from Westminster. Assistant Commissioner, thanks very much for joining us this morning. You know, the repeated headlines day after day after day about the G4S problems and concerns about security at the Olympics. It's all beginning to look a little bit shambolic.
Well, I would say the opposite. I would like to give people reassurance. The plan that we've been developing for a number of years is still exactly the same plan that we're going to deliver for the Games time. What's just going to happen now is a different workforce mix is going to deliver that. So the military have found an extra 3,500 personnel who are going to take the place of some of the G4S staff, but the plan is exactly the same to ensure that we deliver a safe and secure Games.
Yeah, I'm sorry, how can the plan be exactly the same if you haven't got the numbers of people turning up to deliver security that you thought you were going to be? Clearly, if you're having to bring troops in, it's not the same plan.
Well, the plan is exactly the same, which is a concept of a design security in, put an island site, a concept in, put a fence around the outside, search everybody that's going in. All we're saying now is the people doing the searching are going to be different people, but the basic underlying plan is exactly the same. And it's the plan we've been designing for the last 7 years, ever since we got awarded the Games. And I'm satisfied, you know, because of the flexibility being shown by our military colleagues, by police colleagues up and down the country, and by the G4S staff who are coming to work, we will deliver the plan that we set out to.
Can you just clarify then, are you saying that the people doing the searching will no longer be G4S staff? That's what you seem to be saying there.
No, the G4S staff will still be. Those that are there will still be doing the searching, but some of them, they're not going to get the same numbers, is what G4S have said. So some of them will be replaced by military staff, but the basic plan is still exactly the same. We will search everybody going into the venues.
Yeah, the difficulty is we can't be sure how many G4S staff are actually going to turn up, because at the hotel in Manchester, where 2 or 3 of the football teams are playing, only 17 out of 56 G4S staff turned up yesterday. So if only, that's about a third. So if only a third of the G4S staff turned up at the Olympic Park, you'd have a bit of a problem, wouldn't you?
Well, we're working very closely with the military, with LOCOG, with G4S and police forces up and down the country to make sure that we've got the right staff, the right numbers of people to do the search and secure operation. And I have to say, you know, I went onto the Olympic Park yesterday. I went through one of these search areas before I did a press conference, and what I saw was everything that I wanted. G4S staff, military staff, working together to deliver the right sort of screening, the right searching. It was just what we could have wanted. So this is about us all being flexible, working together. We only have one shot at it. The Games, as you say, come a week on Friday, and I'm satisfied we'll be ready to deliver a safe and secure Games.
Can you guarantee then that there will be 100% attendance by G4S staff at the Olympic Park, at least in London?
All I can say is I know G4S are working very, very hard to maximise the number of staff they can have available. What we have brought up is an extra 3,500 military to ensure that the military can fill any shortfall there are. In some places, we're putting police officers into those roles.
The difficulty there, Assistant Commissioner, is that if you don't know and you're the guy in charge, if you can't be sure that everybody's going to turn up, it doesn't really inspire confidence.
No, what I can tell you is we are satisfied that we're doing all the work that is necessary at the moment. That flexibility being shown by the military, by the police service and those G4S staff who are coming to work is ensuring that we've got people in the places where we need them.
OK, so if there are gaps, then they will be filled by police officers or military staff?
Yeah, that is what the government have done. They've mobilised an extra 3,500 military. In some places we put police officers in, but I also know that G4S are working very, very hard to try and maximise their supply of the security guard force. But, you know, we have got a plan. It's a very, very good plan. We've just changed the workforce mix that are going to deliver it.
Chris Allison, thanks very much.
Thank you.
22 minutes past 8. Well, Olympic athletes are continuing to fly in from around the world today ahead of the Games, but some teams have been training in towns and villages across the UK for weeks.
From Serbs in Sheffield to Singaporeans in Surrey, the athletes have been taking time out of their busy schedules to meet local school children, hoping to inspire a new generation of sports stars.
And as John Maguire's been finding out, they've been gaining some young fans.
It's not every day that the fastest men in the Aberdeen Amateur Athletics Club get to test themselves against an African sprint champion. It's been a busy few weeks for Adam Idrissa and the rest of the Cameroon team. Based in Aberdeen for their pre-Olympics camp, they've been training but also building bridges with local people, making new friends.
And had you even heard of Aberdeen before you came here, really?
No, just 3 months before, during our meetings with the National Olympic Committee of Cameroon, they talked about the negotiation with the town of Aberdeen in Scotland. So that's where we started hearing of Aberdeen. We wanted to know more about Aberdeen.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. We are very happy.
We are, of course, a long way away from London here in Aberdeen, but the Olympic spirit reaches this far. Children from local schools who've been doing their sports day getting a chance to meet a real live Olympic athlete. So you're pretty excited about the Olympics then, are you?
Yeah.
And tell me why.
Because there's lots of sports that we like. And we just like watching all of it happening and who wins and stuff.
And who do you think you're going to be supporting?
Cameroon and GB. Cameroon.
You'll be supporting Cameroon as well? I think they'll be thrilled to hear that, won't they? They've got a bit of extra support.
Yeah.
Sort of won you over, haven't they? All right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wherever you live in the UK, chances are you've been close to an Olympian. From the Chinese team in Leeds to the Colombians in Newcastle and Gateshead. From the big to the very small. This, the contingent from Malawi, all 8 of them. And they've been hosted by the University of Gloucestershire.
Well, it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to give Gloucestershire, a slice of the Olympic action. So we were delighted because Malawi were very keen that they got out and about in the community whilst they were here, clearly around their training, and we have to be very mindful of what they're actually here to do. But to make sure that young children in primary schools get to see the athletes, community groups get to see the athletes.
For the swimmers, it means the chance to get used to our wonderful weather and an outside pool, the Lido in Cheltenham. They've never used a 50-metre heated pool before.
It's amazing. The water's warm. At home it's really cold, so it's an honour to swim in a warm pool. And of course I enjoy swimming in a 50-metre pool because at home we don't have a 50-metre pool, so it's nice.
For these athletes, the Olympic Games represents the pinnacle of their careers. For some, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And for their hosts, a chance to play their part in London 2012, wherever they live. John Maguire, BBC News, Aberdeen.
Cameroon getting some extra supporters there.
Brilliant.
Coming up, the BBC News Channel has the latest news from home and abroad.
Here on Breakfast, though, as Coronation Street tackles the sensitive subject of domestic violence against men, we're going to speak to the actors working hard to get the storyline right.
Time now to get news, travel and weather where you are.
See you in a moment. Hello there, good morning. Greater Manchester Police say there are no concerns about security at Olympic venues in the northwest after the force had to step in to secure a hotel in Salford before football teams arrived for the games. The police are on security at the Marriott in Worsley after the private firm G4S failed to provide enough staff. The chief executive of G4S will be questioned by MPs later, but one man who was trained up by the firm to work on Olympic security told BBC Northwest he's not surprised by what's happened. He's asked to remain anonymous.
I got the email of the shifts on the Thursday evening around about 10:30, and I've tried since then and I've still got nowhere, and I'm still waiting for a phone call. I've rang them today to find out where they're up to, and they said they'll ring me sometime today, and I've still not heard of them.
Well, you can hear the latest developments on that story on BBC Radio Manchester throughout the day as they unfold. An investigation's underway after a man's body was found in the water at the Albert Dock in Liverpool this morning. The dead man's believed to have been in his 50s. He was found by a member of the public at around 6 o'clock. The mother of teenager Anthony Walker, who was murdered in a racist attack, is to receive an honorary degree today from the University of Liverpool for her work in trying to promote racial equality. G. Walker set up the Anthony Walker Foundation after her son's death in Huyton 7 years ago. Manchester's Metrolink tram network's 20 years old today. Today's the anniversary of the lines being officially opened. The Queen performed the ceremony for the route between Bury and Altrincham. The tram network now carries 20 million passengers a year. The most recent extension opened last month between Manchester and Oldham. A painting of the legendary Spanish golfer Seve Ballesteros will be unveiled later at the Royal Lytham and St Anne's Golf Club in the week of the Open. He won 2 Opens himself at the course in 1979 and 88. Now let's get the weather. Here's Heather.
Good morning. Well, today it's going to look pretty cloudy, and it is going to be wet at times. Here in Salford, we got off to a misty and a murky start to the day, and it's likely that you did too. Misty and murky, we'll see some outbreaks of rain as we head through the day, particularly through this afternoon. Top temperatures today. Well, it's not cold. They'll get to around about 20 Celsius. Now, this evening and tonight, there's a Met Office weather warning in operation. We are going to get some heavy bursts of rain every now and again, falling onto ground that's already saturated, so there's the risk of some localised flooding and some difficult driving conditions through this evening and through tonight. Again, it's certainly not cold. Temperatures overnight for some of us no lower than 16 Celsius. And then tomorrow, well, another Met Office warning. This is an early warning for some heavy rain possible tomorrow. You'll see where the brighter colours are on the chart. We're going to see some heavy downpours, widespread. So again, the risk of some localised flooding and some difficult driving conditions. Fairly windy as well. Top temperatures 18 Celsius. And then the rest of the week, well, it starts to improve. Sunshine and showers for Thursday and Friday. By the weekend, it's looking a little drier.
There are delays of up to half an hour on trains between Manchester and Sheffield this morning because of a signalling problem at Hazel Grove. Also problems on the roads on Scotland Road in Liverpool because of an accident, and on the Woodhead Pass delays there because of roadworks. That's it for now. I'll be back with more for you around about 9 o'clock. See you then. Bye-bye.
Good morning, you're watching Breakfast with Bill Turnbull and Susanna Reid.
The head of the private security firm G4S will face questions from a committee of MPs today over his company's failure to provide enough staff for the Olympic Games.
Nick Buckles will appear before the Home Affairs Select Committee. Yesterday, it emerged that police officers from 8 forces have been drafted in to cover for G4S staff who'd failed to turn up at a number of Olympic venues.
The most senior Syrian politician to defect to the oppositions told the BBC the regime would not hesitate to use chemical weapons, his warning made as the fighting moves further into the capital, Damascus. The American Secretary of State Hillary Clinton says President Assad's government will not survive, but Nawaf al-Fares, the former ambassador to Iraq for Syria, said President Assad would only be ousted by force.
Ministers in the Scottish Government will meet later to discuss plans to allow same-sex marriage. The proposals would see Scotland become the first part of the UK to introduce the policy, but they've provoked strong opposition from some religious groups. The leader of the Roman Catholic Church in Scotland is calling for a referendum on the issue.
A report from the US Senate has accused the British bank HSBC of allowing drug cartels and terrorists to launder money through its US operations. It found that lax controls allowed the activity to go on for 7 years. HSBC officials will appear at a Senate hearing later today. They're expected to apologise and make promises to improve their procedures.
New research suggests there's been a big jump in the amount of personal information illegally traded online. The credit checking agency Experian says 12 million items of data were bought and sold by fraudsters in the first 3 months of this year. The average Briton has 26 online accounts, but only 5 different passwords to protect their details.
Tributes have been paid to one of the founding members of the rock group Deep Purple, John Lord, who's died at the age of 71. He'd been receiving treatment for pancreatic cancer. He co-wrote many of the band's most famous songs, including Smoke on the Water. A statement on his website said he had passed from darkness to light.
The United States is suffering its worst drought in more than 50 years. Crops, including corn and soybeans, have been hit by the dry conditions. Several states have seen wildfires. Figures show there have only been 2 drier occasions in American history, once in the 30s and once in the 1950s.
So you look out your window of a morning and what do you expect to see?
A few birds, maybe the cat.
Yeah, but not this. Yep, a herd of cows just trotting down the road.
And that's James Lee who took the pictures. It's in Harrogate in North Yorkshire. The cows obviously managed to get out of their fields, decided to go stretch their legs on a rather further wander. People upset locally because of the hoof prints left on the front lawn. Probably a couple of other things left behind as well. Knowing cows.
Yeah, there you go. Not quite into the sunset, but into the sunrise. Marvellous stuff. Those are the main stories this morning. Here's what's coming up a little bit later.
You screwed up as usual, lumbering in there with your pathetic good intentions. You know nothing!
As they play out a gripping domestic violence storyline on the cobbles of Coronation Street, we're speaking to actors Alan Halsall and Natalie Gumedi from The Soap.
Day-to-day things, but to have them in a sling, then in bed with you, no, I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
That's attachment parenting she's talking about, a practice that continues to divide people. We'll ask one mother how easy it is really to cut out cots, bottles and buggies.
She was kind of prodding me saying, Sean, look, do you want me to go or do you want me to stay? Do you want me to stay or do you want me to go? What is it? And apparently in my sleep I just went, a bit of both.
He's off booze, he's off cigarettes, he's going on the road. 2 new shows. We're speaking to Sean Hughes about the task ahead and how his father's death has inspired one of his new routines.
Never mind the cows on the Tour de France yesterday. It was take your donkey to work day.
Yeah, I know. You see all sorts of things in the mountains when you're watching the Tour de France. Yeah, watch out for these fabulous pictures coming up. Bradley Wiggins remains over 2 minutes clear of the rest as the Tour de France takes a rest today before heading into the Pyrenees. The 15th stage was won by the Frenchman Pierrick Fedrigo in front of his home supporters. But Wiggins held on to the yellow jersey, and there's just 5 more stages before we find out if he'll be the first British rider to win it.
Mentally for the boys, they've had a tough couple of weeks now, and the whole race is tied, so I think everyone's just looking forward to having a bit of downtime tomorrow before we get the last couple of days underway.
The defending Open champion Darren Clarke will partner Ernie Els and Zach Johnson for his opening rounds at Royal Lytham. Clarke says the course will rightly prove a tough test for the world's best golfers. Tiger Woods, who will play with Justin Rose, branded some areas of the course unplayable after a practice round at the weekend.
The course is tough, very tough. It's very narrow. The rough is very, very penal either side of the fairway. It's very, very deep. There's a huge premium on getting the ball in the fairways this week and staying out of the fairway bunkers. They've all been redone. There's some new tees out there. The course is playing longer than it was the last time it was here, but it's in fantastic condition.
Newcastle are still keen to lure Andy Carroll back to Tyneside. They're planning a fresh loan offer for the Liverpool striker after their first bid was rejected. Newcastle initially only offered to pay part of Carroll's £80,000 a week wages. They also wanted to pay £13 million if he then signed a permanent deal. Liverpool want it to be more like £20 million. Dundee have been invited to replace Rangers in the Scottish Premier League. The decision was taken at the SPL's annual meeting, which means relegated Dunfermline won't get a reprieve. And athletes and officials from around the world have started making their way to London for the Olympics, which starts in 10 days' time. These competitors will be waking up at the Athletes' Village this morning, along with Team GB's footballers, for the first time. And apparently yesterday the footballers had a special visitor. Dame Kelly Holmes came to talk to them about taking part in Olympics, how magical that experience is going to be for them.
Because it's not just being on the field of play and going for victory, it's that general Olympic experience.
Yeah, and one of the things everybody's commented on is the huge dining area. Ooh. You go and you can get your dinner from any part of the world, and you see famous athletes from all over the world.
All eating together.
All eating together.
Marvellous.
And everyone wants to go and sit next to Usain Bolt.
Probably.
See what he's eating. Brilliant. Sally, thanks very much.
24 minutes to 9. You may remember it yesterday. We spoke to the mother of Kane Gorney, the 22-year-old young man who died of dehydration while he was a patient in hospital.
Well, we had a huge response. Several viewers getting in touch to share their experiences of good nursing care in some cases, but many experiences of poor nursing care as well.
So why are cases like Kane slipping through the net? We'll talk to Mike Travis in a moment, who's a nurse and a member of the Royal College of Nursing. But first, let's take a look at the interview yesterday that we did with Kane's mother, Rita Cronin.
Well, the problem was there were so many staff. He was in for 3 days and he'd had 24 members of staff dealing with him. So there's no communication. Nobody knows what the other person is doing. And he had a brain tumour the year before, and because of the brain tumour it left him with a problem with his pituitary gland, which caused his fluid levels. He wasn't able to control his own fluid levels, but his notes were so big that when they saw the notes, they couldn't be bothered to go through it. There was too much to read. And there wasn't enough communication going on with the staff. I was with him most of the time, and he was having drinks, but they weren't giving him his medication, and because of that he was dying of thirst.
So let's talk to Mike Travis, a nurse, member of the Royal College of Nursing. Mike, thanks very much indeed for coming in, and good morning to you. Of course, Kane Gorney died, and before he died, viewers will remember that he phoned the police. He phoned the police to get a drink because the nurses were not responding to his needs. Now, that seems to be such an utterly terrible indictment of his nursing care. And people got in touch with us to give examples where they have also been very concerned about nursing care. What's happening in these cases?
I think we're going through a very difficult time just now in nursing, in that I think with the budget cuts, and I know it comes down to money, but it really does come down to cash, is that more and more hospitals are concentrating on providing a business service rather than providing a caring service. And
why would this affect an individual nurse when a patient is in such desperate need, they're not getting the right medication? Firstly, that was a failure, and they're not being cared for. Why would budget cuts affect an individual's nurse's ability to care?
It can change the skill mix on a ward. Just now we seem to be going through a period where we're replacing registered nurses with assistant practitioners, which are unregulated, and there's a very much different way that nursing is then developed. So for example, if you've got an unregulated, the majority of your staff on a ward are unregulated and they can't deliver, for example, medicines.
What do you mean
then
unregulated? They're not trained?
Well, in the nurses, no, it's not about trained. Because
so they're all fully trained staff then?
No, they're all unregulated staff of people like healthcare assistants who are not covered by a regulatory body. Nurses are covered by the NMC, and we have standards to work to. But within the healthcare sector just now, as we cut costs, and wages are a big cost, we're starting to take nurses out of the system and replacing them with associates practitioners. Yeah. And that changes the way that nurses work and deliver services. So, for example, if you talk about just about medications, if you're in a really in an acute sector, if less people are delivering more medications to patients, there's competing priorities there.
I mean, a lot of nursing staff would have been horrified about what they heard in the case of Kane Gorney. On the other hand, as you know, we've been sent a number of examples. Carolyn said her teenage daughter was suffering from severe side effects from prescribed medication, and there was a problem there. June went in for a knee operation, was put on a drip for 3 days. Nobody checked to see if she was passing fluid, and a member of staff gave her husband, she says, a paper sack with all her belongings. The ward sister told him she would most probably die in the night. I mean, it seems almost unbelievable callousness sometimes, which you would never expect from the nursing profession.
And those stories are horrific. They really are, and their employers need to investigate those issues and bring them out into the fore. But I think it's fair to say just now is that nurses and nursing is delivering a great service just now. But when you're under a lot of pressure to, if you haven't got enough staff on a ward, then staff have got this issue of competing priorities, and sometimes they fail because they're human beings.
Are nurses, though, as compassionate as they used to be? People tend to look back at the old days, say 40, 50 years ago, say, oh, those were the days because there was matron patrolling the wards and people really cared. Do they care now?
Yeah, I've been a nurse for 30 years, and I have to say is that I think the quality of our young nurses is outstanding. And I think they're a very different type of nurse that we bring out. We work in a very different way. 30, 40, 50 years ago, you'd have people lying in bed with a broken leg for 10 weeks, and all their care would be given by a nurse or by a healthcare professional. These days, part of the issue is about rehabilitating them while they're in hospital, trying to get them to sort of do things for themselves. But there's a balance there of how that works. But I mean, for me, I think I see lots of young nurses, and I have a lot of hope for the future.
Good. All right, Travis, thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Steph's at a delicatessen this morning, looking ahead at the inflation figures. That's how much things cost. But I'm a bit worried also about the inflation of waistlines with the amount that she's got to choose from there. Morning.
Good morning to you, Billy. Yeah, absolutely. So much food and things I could eat, but I promise you I haven't eaten anything yet. I'm here to talk about the cost of living, because at 9:30 this morning we'll find out what the latest inflation figure is, and that tells us how quickly things are going up in price. Now, we've seen food prices fall over the last year or two, but there is concern with the extreme weather that we've had, the droughts that we've had in America, and the heavy rain that, of course, we just can't get away from here. That's all having an effect on farmers being able to produce the food. Well, we've got two experts here this morning. We've got Simon Bauer, first of all. Simon, mean, you're a coffee trader and you sell coffee as well. What's business like for you at the moment?
Business is pretty brisk, actually. Coffee always does quite well in recessions and bad weather, so this rain is pretty good for us. But interestingly, the price of coffee is all over the place at the moment. It's been down. It was down at a 2-year low last week, but it's bounced up again. But on top of that, there's all sorts of other things that are coming into play and affecting the cost, such as the exchange rate and staff costs, energy costs. All of that's having a huge impact in the cost of food production.
And when we're talking about these fluctuations, put them in perspective for someone who's buying a cup of coffee in a cafe or a jar of coffee.
Well, it's perhaps not something to worry about too much, because even if coffee prices were to double today and everything else remained the same, then if all of that was passed on by the roaster and by the cafe owner, then your cost of a cup of coffee would only go up by 3 or 4 pence.
So not a massive difference.
Not a massive difference, but it will have an effect over a period of time.
Yeah, and it's not just coffee. There's also, of course, the other things which go into your basket of goods when they're looking at this inflation price. And we've got a market expert here with us this morning, Glyn Jones. Good morning, Glyn.
Good morning.
In terms of the context with inflation, just explain the different things that are in it. And
Yeah, I mean, it is a basket of goods that represents the overall economy. So food, yes, is starting to go up, but that's only about 12% of the inflation index. So other things such as housing costs, which are relatively flat, fuel costs, which are coming down. So very much our expectation this morning is we'll see a similar number to we saw last month, which is inflation just under 3% on a CPI measure.
And when we're talking about this 3%, it can be very different for different people, can't it? Because people can feel like their personal inflation is going up a lot more than that.
Yes, I mean, it is an average. Therefore, there will be a lot of people who have inflation below that and a lot of people who have it above that. It depends what you spend your money on. At the moment, petrol prices are coming down, so if you spend a large part of your money on filling up the car because you travel a lot, then actually your personal inflation is probably negative. On the flip side of that, the highest item last month was postage costs. We all know Royal Mail put up their cost of their stamps, 23% increase year on year. So if you write a lot of letters, your personal inflation is probably going to be quite a bit higher.
And it is still very high. We're talking about it coming down, but the Bank of England's target is 2%, and we're still at 2.8. Anywhere near to getting that, do you think?
I think it could do in the short term, but ultimately it won't do the economy too much harm if we actually see inflation a little bit higher than that target for a few years. Helps deal with debt problems.
OK, thank you for your time this morning, and I'll hand back to the studio. Right, lads, the camera's off. You can eat the pastries now.
Oh, we were told they were yours.
No, they're not mine, they're yours. Glyn, don't pretend you haven't been eating them all morning. His girlfriend's really worried that he's going to get fat. He's not eating it, honestly.
Yeah.
Steph, don't you pretend you haven't been eating them all morning.
And don't embarrass the guests either.
I know.
All right. Thanks very much.
Go on. Tuck in. You know you want to.
It's just gone 9:15.
When you think of domestic violence, it's all too easy to imagine the woman is the victim. Of course, in many, many cases that is true, but research shows that more than 1 in 10 men experience some kind of domestic abuse in their lifetime.
And Coronation Street has decided to tackle this sensitive and often taboo subject in a storyline that's been developing over the past few months, involving the mechanic Tyrone Dobbs and his partner Kirsty Soames.
So we're going to be speaking to the actors involved, Alan Halsall and Natalie Gumedi. But first, let's have a look at some of their scenes together.
Oh. Hey, I'm sorry. Oh, no, don't go. Wait. You're a car mechanic. If you can't whack it with a lump hammer, you're stuck. Oi.
Pick that up! You heard me. Pick up that food and put it in the bin. Can't just go having tantrums like a toddler. Not in my house. Just trying to make things special.
Oh, you didn't, did you? You screwed up as usual, lumbering in there with your pathetic good intentions. You know nothing!
And Alan and Natalie with us now. Gosh, it is very intense stuff, isn't it, really?
It is, yeah.
And explain why your character is abusive in the relationship.
Well, she's had a difficult upbringing, not to excuse her behaviour in any way, but just to understand it further. She was abused by her father growing up, and she was a witness to the abuse of her mother by her father as well. So that's definitely where it all started. And I think she's had several difficult relationships where she's found it very difficult to trust men. And she's been cheated on. And so she's been left in a position where she feels that the best form of defence is attack, you know.
And we spoke to a victim of domestic violence a little earlier on the programme, someone I think you've met as well, to actually find out how a man in this position feels. What did you discover?
Yeah, absolutely. We met Ian a few weeks back because it's not a subject that many people will talk about. Ian's one of the few that will talk about this subject. So it was really interesting to see that, yes, it does go on in real life, and, you know, and the severity of it as well, you know, and so it's great that Coronation Street are tackling the issue.
You've been working with a charity called Mankind, which deals with this issue. What sort of response have they been getting since the storyline started?
Well, I know when the second time the domestic abuse was shown between Kirsty and Tyrone, that the response shot through the roof, because obviously they showed the number after the episode. So it's great that people, unfortunately, they're going through this, but they can relate, and it's helping them talk about it further.
But I mean, that's a strange thing in a way. There are people watching it, at Coronation Street, as they do regularly, in their homes, possibly alongside the very person who's hitting them.
Yeah. And I think as well, people in that scenario, like Ian, wouldn't know where to get help, or, you know, so the fact that Corrie promotes that and promotes Mankind, people have got a lifeline then really to ring, you know, and it literally could save lives.
And your character, how does he respond? Does he, I mean, I don't want to give away any parts of the storyline, but up until now, has he felt confident enough to share that?
No, he kind of gets caught out by Tina. She sees the bruises and questions him, so he has to give up some information, really. But, you know, himself in the situation, he's kind of got everything he wants, in the fact that he's got a girlfriend, now a fiancée, she's got a baby on the way. That's everything he wants. So he's kind of trapped in this, exactly what he wants, but, you know, with this domestic abuse happening as well.
Really tough acting to do, I'd have thought, because you are really going to extremes, presumably, beyond what you've experienced before, professionally or personally.
Well, it's not something you can find any basis in reality. You can't relate to it in any way. So it is certainly the most extreme I've ever had to behave and act. But all we can do is kind of work together and think about how our characters would react. I think is something you've said quite a lot.
Absolutely.
And is the part of you that when you are hit or, you know, attacked, that instinctively wants to put your hands up, put your hands out, sort of fight back and defend yourself, and potentially get into the kind of fight that presumably a lot of men are afraid of getting into?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with Tyrone, you know, he's much more mellow than maybe I am, and he's very restrained, and I don't think he would ever do that. I don't think he would ever fight back. I don't think that's on the cards type thing.
Because I just wonder whether that is a dilemma for men who are victims in this case, because people might think, well, why don't you just defend yourself?
When I've spoke to my family and friends about when I met Ian and said, and the questions was, well, why didn't you just walk out, or why didn't you just fight back? And, you know, I don't suppose I could explain that as well as Ian could, in the fear of just feeling trapped.
Yeah, because that's the first piece of advice that people who are abused always get, which is, well, leave the relationship and then move on from there. But Ian was saying that the relationship was so manipulative, if you like, that he was groomed into it, and gradually all his relationships with other people somehow cut off.
And there was a real mirror between our storyline and Ian's story at the beginning. You know, obviously I think Ian's went to a different level, but at the beginning Kirsty's isolated Tyrone like Ian was, you know, from his friends.
How does that work, though, this isolation?
Well, I think it's important to remember that the emotional abuse and the manipulation is very much as important as the physical side of it. I think that's when people think of domestic abuse, they think of the physical, but it is the emotional as well, and it can just start off by kind of, oh, well, are you going to leave me on my own tonight? Or, you know, something as small as that, where it might just be making the other partner feel slightly guilty, and it sort of goes on and on into sort of jealousy and possessiveness. And I think we're seeing that very much in Kirsty and Tyrone's storyline.
And I wonder whether, I mean, also the fact that your character is pregnant, and for a man that poses another issue, because if you start to break up that relationship, you're going to lose access to your child.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's kind of an excuse for Tyrone as well. He kind of thinks that it's just the hormones, it's just the pregnancy, and once she's had the baby, you know, this will all stop. So it's kind of an excuse for him to get away, and as I said, it's everything he wants, so it's hard to walk away from.
But watching you think, well, how could she be like that if she is pregnant? You know, this maternal instinct coming out, and she's still being violent.
That's something I think that we're trying to understand ourselves, and we're struggling with it to an extent because we can't know. But in her moments of rage, there's obviously a switch that flips in her where she loses sight of reality, I think.
How long did you take the bump off? Because I know you've been finding it difficult.
We're filming it today. Today, so I'm kind of on tenterhooks.
Yeah.
Quite worried for
that's
the
a
day
whole
ahead.
lot of other research you've had to do then, isn't it?
An awful lot, yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can watch how the storyline unfolds on Coronation Street, of course, on ITV1.
And we'll put a link to that charity Mankind that deals with male domestic abuse on our website this morning.
Let's have a look at the weather now. At 6 minutes to 9, here's Carol.
Thank you, Susanna. Good morning. Well, today for many of us, it's actually going to be dry. Dry, but we do have 1 or 2 showers around and also some rain. Now, they're coming in courtesy of an array of fronts to the west. We've already got that rain coming into Northern Ireland, and you can see the progress it's going to make, slowly moving eastwards, eventually taking some of it into the south of Scotland and more of it in across the north of England, where at times this afternoon it could be heavy. But to start the day, it is dry for many. You can see some sunshine around as well, but through the day the rain moves out of Northern Ireland across the Irish Sea and into the north of England and parts of southwest Scotland in particular. Now it pushes across the north of England and into Scotland, and some of this will be heavy. There's still an element of doubt as to its northern extent, but you can see too in other western parts there'll be some rain or some drizzle. Into tomorrow then, we still will have this rain across the north, moving steadily northeastwards. Behind it, a good packet of showers. Some of them will be heavy with hail and thunder, and quite a breezy day as well. But there'll still be some decent breaks in the cloud, with temperatures up to 21 degrees in London. For Thursday, we're back into the showery scenario once again, and some of them could be with hail and thunder. But equally, there'll be some brighter skies, especially as we travel further north. Temperatures down just a touch at 19, but worth mentioning, Saturday is looking pretty good for most of the land, as indeed is Tuesday, as the jet stream finally starts to drift that bit further north. Billy and Susanna.
Thanks very much. We've got our young guest back in the studio. We'll be hearing from him, literally, in just a moment. There he is. Here you are. You see yourself on telly, Will. Well done.
So, the reason that Will is here is because he has benefited from attachment parenting, and it is being reported that dozens of support groups for mums and dads have been set up around the UK to promote a controversial way of bringing up children. It's kind of attachment presenting this morning, isn't it?
Attachment parenting calls for children to be kept physically close to their mother at all times. It's based on...
I want him in my lap.
the 3 Bs: breastfeeding, bed sharing and baby carrying in slings.
That's all right, he can go for a wander. Yeah. All of these should be done until the child is 3. Some critics, though, concerned youngsters can become too attached. And Della Hyde is here. She's Will's mum. Will's just gone for a wander around the studio. And psychologist David Holmes is here as well. He's staying put for the time being. We're asking, how practical is this?
I can understand, certainly in the first year of the baby's life, they're wanting the skin contact and building the bond in that way with the baby. But 3 years is excessive to me, to put it simply.
Because I hold him close to me all the time like this, it's making him a bit mad. It's like if I don't hold him, he cries. But I've got to go back to work in March. Do you know what I mean? It's hard.
Why? No, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's bad enough anyway, isn't it? You know what I mean? You can't do anything anyway, doing normal day-to-day things, but to have them in a sling, then in bed with you, no, I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
I think maybe not necessarily having them actually with you physically all the time, but definitely spending more time with the children does benefit them later on in life, definitely.
3 years? Ow! When they get teeth, I think it's time to stop breastfeeding, to be honest with you. Well, for me, I did it for as long as I could, but it was for about 2-3 months for each of them, and I think that was enough.
So we mentioned Della Hyde is with us. Will is on and off set as he feels free to go. He is being properly looked after, I should say. And psychologist Dr. David Holmes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Della, the benefits, what are they? Because it sounds you've got Will.
Yep.
You've got another boy who's 20 months old.
Oliver.